What do we know about mushrooms? Well, for example, what they are scary pathogens more often in general. They inhabit insects, especially the termites. Alert termites guards if they see a worker infected with a fungus. They bring him to cemetery and cut off his head, and then two guards perform self-destruction, sacrificing oneself trying to protect the queen in the nest and the colony from infection. However, some fungi are pathogens. They know how to bypass this protection. They have sporulation inhibiting switch, therefore insects are not afraid of spores when this fungi attracts them. One termite found a fungus. Others followed it, and it turned out to be a Trojan horse. Even security, I didn't notice anything. As a result of the fungus gave them to the queen, and she fed them. The brood and the entire colony are doomed to extinction. The mycelium of the fungus envelopes all termites are mummifying. This works not only with termites, but also with many other insects such like ants, mushroom flies, mosquitoes, bed bugs, and so on. Well, their people die every year from pathogenic fungi. Millions of people, for example, from people like aspergillus smoking, but more on that later. For now, let's see what else they do with insects in front of you. Flu cordyceps, more precisely the ant that carries this flu inside himself. He became infected with its spore recently, but his behavior has already become suspicious. Root system has sprouted in his muscles. His body is invaded by cordyceps from stupefying the victim's brain with chemicals, substances, turning an insect into a zombie, forcing him to look for ideal conditions for its cultivation. There must be light enough and humid enough for the parasite growing inside. For such behavior manipulation, cordyceps forms a complex structure inside the ant's body, a cellular network that intertwines everything, internal organs, and at the chemical level controls every corner of his body. But at the same time, what is interesting does not penetrate into host's central nervous system, clings to the leaf with a death grip, and cordyceps shows its true colors, essence crawling out. Fruiting body fungus grows from the head of an ant. From millions of spores will fall into this bag. Air after 3 weeks of cordyceps growth begins to dispel these disputes. Contagious, but the danger is far away. Not only ants, many others insect species also become his. There are more than 600 victims in the world cordyceps species, and each specializes in a certain type. Insects are a very terrible pathogen. Fortunately, cannot attack mammals because they are too high body temperature. That flu does not tolerate eating unique cordyceps that don't just spread controversy, but they also build a house for themselves. For example, they take control of the caterpillar, is not given to her, turn into a butterfly, and spend the winter like that, gradually feeding on the victim, and like snow will come down, begin to spread controversy to catch a new cordyceps. Caterpillar controlled behavior even 48 million years ago. Insects. What does the found one say? Fossil in Germany. Due to its unique biological history of this flu, is often becomes a science fiction hero. Books and films responsible for the zombie apocalypse, however, is not for humans. On the contrary, this is dangerous for scientists. The mushroom is of great interest because that it has the potential to become valuable raw materials for the production of medicines, including from cancer. That is, even this we can put the monster to good use. The thing is that the flu releases substances which protect it from pathogenic organisms. That it's funny because he himself pathogen, and this defense mechanism is of interest for production immunomodulatory, anti-infectious, and anti-cancer drugs for humans. Because of this, they even appeared today. Cordyceps, where is this mushroom grown? Instead of throwing insects at him, a special substrate is prepared for it, enriched with necessary additives. And yes, insects are quite a pleasure. Expensive. What makes cordyceps one of the most expensive mushrooms to grow? Cordyceps-like mushrooms can replace a significant proportion of chemical pesticides as an environmentally sound and economically scalable kill ants. Others. The ants themselves grow in front of you. White champignon. This mushroom lives on 5 m deep underground and feeds fresh tree leaves. Yes, 5 meters underground it feeds on fresh leaves trees. To get to them on it, a huge colony of cutting ants is working. Millions of such ants provide in return. He grows food for the mushroom. Tiny hyphae on which they feed. Vulture releases chemical signals telling the ants what type of leaf it is wants to eat. The scouts are moving forward with these instructions. A worker Ants walk hundreds of meters in search of choosing the right type of leaves. Today fell on a young Bix tree with age just a few years, still struggling to reach the heights where there is a lot of light, can't afford to lose a single one leaf. But the ants don't care. When working together they can tear a large leaf in a few minutes. The sound of cutting attracts more ants to give them will, and they cut off weighs 10 times more than your own. Looks like a river of leaves flowing through earth, and this is only part of a vast network stretching for kilometers throughout forests. To avoid congestion, ants workers digging trenches around obstacles, thousands of pieces delivered every hour waiting for the mushroom. Having such a stable the flow of food, mushroom is growing rapidly, filling the entire space of your home, so the ants have to dig more space. This leads to their nests become very large, the size of a bus. The mushroom has good position. What cannot be said about the Bix tree, she seems to have little chance of survival. But this is where the fun begins. The tree fights back. It begins use chemical weapons. Tree fills the leaves with a poisonous toxin which is capable of killing a distant mushroom. But the ants do not understand this, and while they take pieces of leaves to the mushroom themselves, poison him, following an insidious plan. Tree is a long-range attack. When the poison begins to take effect, the ants they feel that their mushroom is weakening, and they respond to his signals by switching to another source of leaves. This way, chemical response of plants causes ants switch from one tree on another. It's like a blow and a counterblow. This allows enough the leaves remain uneaten so that the tree could recover. But how do we know not only plants, there are toxic mushrooms in this matter will give them a good head start on you. The most beautiful spider web is very funny mushroom. It looks a lot like some edible mushrooms because they eat it by mistake, and that's where it begins. The funny part is that if it eat, then you'll be fine. You will have a whole 2 to 3 weeks. You don't have any symptoms. You will feel nothing unusual, and then you'll just die a terrible death. The point is that these mushrooms contain very insidious poison known as Arlan, which has a very long latent period. Sometimes he doesn't show himself for a long time, up to 3 weeks, and only then in humans symptoms similar to normal occur. Because of this, doctors often diagnose the flu wrong diagnosis and prescription wrong treatment, and while you improperly treated toxin causes kidney failure and death. Science didn't know about this until the middle of the 20th century, because everyone who died from these mushrooms didn't even understand what was going on, and only when in the Polish city of Bydgoszcz 19 people died from these mushrooms at once, then the investigation that began could find out the reason. Still today people are often poisoned by this mushroom. One interesting incident happened with another mushroom in southwest China, in rural area in Yunnan. Every year during the rainy season in the middle summer from June to August, at an altitude of 1,800–2,400 m for inexplicable reasons, quite healthy people stopped abruptly heart, and they died. It happened again and again until the death toll reached 400 people. The incident received name Yunnan sudden death syndrome. Scientists have begun an investigation. It took 5 years to by 2010 understand that the culprit is small white mushroom that grows on rotten wood only in this area of China. It was found that families collecting grief for sale ate these little white ones mushrooms because they don't have commercial value. 2 amino acids present in mushrooms turned out to be toxic. After opening this, people in the provinces have stopped receiving information die from these mushrooms because the government made sure that almost hammer this information into every person. But why does nature do? There are several different types of mushrooms that are poisonous. Theories hypothesis that they are so protected from pests exposed criticism, because even poisonous for us mushrooms are eaten by various creatures that immune to their poison. Because today there are more reason. The theory is that they are different species produce different chemical substances, and since there are thousands and thousands of them, it is not surprising that some of these chemicals are toxic to us. For example, you and I love sugar, but for sugar is toxic to many animals. For cats, this does not mean sugar toxic in itself, just not all of it digests. So we have with poisonous mushrooms same story, because it's not worth it, and curse. Moreover, if the mushrooms weren't, if we existed, we wouldn't exist either with you, and that's why mushrooms are known do not relate to plants or animals, are a separate kingdom organisms, but still in their own way biological properties they are closer to animals than plants, and despite what mushrooms and fungi associate with death and decay, they do. Straight mushrooms perform the opposite actions. Important recycling function: decompose dead organisms and return all these nutrients into the cycle of life. Mushrooms seem to be at the very end of the food chain, but at the same time in the very beginning. If we didn't have mushrooms, plants would choke the earth. Mushrooms, they devour death and thereby give life. This is the real digestive tract of the forest. But despite the fact that mushrooms devour everything organic matter 800 million years ago, before the appearance, this same organic matter, when the earth was naked, the first land mushrooms ate was something else. They ate stones directly. They took and ate the most ordinary stones. No matter how strange it may sound, mushrooms extracted minerals from rocks, and it helped launch life on sushi for everyone. The fact is that the mushrooms managed to turn stones into nutritious soil. Spores produce acid that destroys hard rock surface. Fast-growing filaments of mycelium hyphae as the drill enters the stone and removes it from it. Minerals exerting pressure 100 times excess pressure in a car gnaws the ends of the hyphae on the tire. The stone can be called prey minerals on molecular level. In this way, mushrooms are millions of years old, slowly turn the stones into usable soil for the appearance of the first plants. After 500 million years, a group of algae began to move to land, prepared by mushrooms in symbiosis with which the algae also managed to join. This became the starting point of everyone plants on land. Big explosion biology. The land began to turn green 450 million years ago. Planet Kish bizarre exists with you, but almost all of them were under. There was nothing frozen by water on land. Lava is softened only by mosses and river banks stuck around. The simplest plants that are still could not grow far from the river because knew how to store water and transport it. In the end, the mushrooms came to the rescue again, found a convenient path between plant cells. Some even managed to break through inwards, creating tree systems called arbusely, through which plants take what they need from fungi. They get phosphorus and give carbon in return, obtained through the process of photosynthesis. Worked with mushrooms, plants began thrive by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. They began to change the composition, the entire atmosphere, paving the way. Complex organism. Since then, almost every plant began to live under mushroom symbiote support. In fact, mushrooms planted all these plants. With the emergence of plants appeared and new types of mushrooms. Next generation mushrooms have learned to use the soil differently than their distant ancestors did. Above the surface of the earth, they had the fruiting body, is what we are used to call the mushrooms, although in fact it's just only their genitals with which they produce spores. But underground, the bulk of the fungus itself is already located. Its body, which is called mycelium, consists of long threads and forms complex networks going deep into the ground, absorbing everything in its path and even penetrating into wood. The mycelium releases special enzymes that help him pave the way. We can say that enzymes are the teeth and claws of mushrooms. The mycelium grows and processes unnecessary material for later use it elsewhere. Mushroom can migrate to any location, space, in an attempt to find food. For hundreds of millions of years of mushroom evolution have become masters of survival. It has mycelium almost everywhere, more networks than our brains have neural pathways, and works almost the same like electrical impulses. Electrolytes. This is the most common view on Earth. He is actually the owner. Planets mycelium everywhere. When you walk in the forest, there are about 300 miles of mushroom under. With every step you take, they form massive networks, like a big wood. This is what scientists call mycelium networks, the World Wide Web, and for good reason. The point is that trees interact with mycelium and use it as paths connecting one tree to another. They use each other to feed. That is, one tree transmits nutrient substances to another using mycelium. In as a passage of mushrooms using mycelium give water and minerals to tree roots, which the trees themselves cannot reach because of limited root size. But do mushrooms. This is not out of the kindness of my heart, but for the sake of own benefit. The fact is that what the healthier the plant, the larger it is in. The process of photosynthesis releases sugar needed by the mushroom. This is more than just deal because the result is mycelium connects all the trees in the forest extensive network, ensuring the exchange of all some substances necessary for the forest trees known as mother trees are recognized their descendants and send them resources, giving your young animals the best possible start. And not so long ago, scientists discovered that trees send over the network not only nutrients but also chemical and electrical signals, allowing them interact with each other. Trees can be selfish and love spell or even wage war by sending toxins harmful to competitors. However, most trees still help to each other, otherwise they simply would not have survived. Raise the alarm when attacked by a leaf beetle, giving other trees a head start. Production of protective chemicals, that is, when some herbivore eats the leaves of one of the trees, only this tree begins to produce toxins so that the animal retreats. But also dozens of trees around are amazing thanks to mushrooms. The forest acts like this, as if these are not separate trees, but one supers. As a result, the better for the plants, the better the mushrooms have perfect symbiosis from which the whole world benefits, including us. Theoretically, mycelium can live forever if he is food, and that is why the oldest and largest organism on Earth. This is the flu that lives in the Malu Forest Reserve in American state of Oregon. This flu covers an area of 880 gars, and its age estimated to be 2,400 years old. Is this species true is a parasite, and takes away nutrients from tree roots without giving them anything in return, which is why these trees are dying here en masse. But not all of the mushrooms are good. Not all of them eat dead plants, some feed on quite alive, and there are those that announce their presence in an intimidating manner. Beautiful way in African Congo. This phenomenon is known as chimpanzee fire. Mysterious bioluminescent glow becomes brighter when the mushrooms are digested. Tree, when they are saturated, they develop. Everyone can reproduce. Organs produce literally billions of spores, and each of these spores can become a killer. Would nevertheless, the properties of mushrooms decompose organic matter we have learned well used for your own purposes. For example, yeast and mushroom malt are used for preparing beer, wine, cheese, and finishing tests to the required condition. This ability breaking things down helps us cope with some of our problems. For example, environmental pollution, including pollution such as oil spills. The same properties of mushrooms are used in medicine. They helped us accomplish a revolution in this area. For example, penicillin derived from mushrooms is the first antibiotic created, which today has already saved millions' lives. To create the first antibiotic immediately gave an advantage to the Allies in World War II. If among 1,000 wounded Germans from gas gangrene, which was provoked by bacteria, died 150 people are among the wounded Americans, no one died from gas gangrene, and all thanks to penicillin. We could achieve much more with mushrooms medicine, and not only, but scientists are still bad. They were studied despite the fact that today, according to some estimates, up to 1.5 million species are known. We studied mushrooms, we only 2% of them, but many more are opening every day. New species, some of them are not weak, they surprise. For example, just as they exist carnivorous plants with traps in nature, there are also carnivorous mushrooms with similar tricks, such as oysters. Mushrooms or oyster mushrooms are very difficult for them. There is enough nitrogen they are doing to make up for its deficiency. Special trick from the end of some threads. Oyster mushroom myceliums release small salmon and release a powerful toxin. They are roundworms. Due for one reason, these microscopic organisms live in wood and are full of nitrogen, which is needed. Oyster mushrooms lure voracious mushrooms worms into their salmon, and then suck them in. The worm is caught and now becomes lunch for the mushroom, and this is a very tricky glowing one. Bioluminescent mushrooms. Some creatures use their lights to this. Bugs mating games or glowing spots are designed to produce, impress, and attract a partner, and seeing the glow of this mushroom, he thinks he has found it's probably hidden inside, but the mushroom plays with him, because the glow comes from the puzzled mushroom itself. The beetle is looking for a female everywhere, and while he makes everything covered with fungal spores is what the mushroom needed. Now, the beetle will spread these spores everywhere. Where will he go next to reproduce himself? I could, But I helped the mushroom do it uses a similar trick. Disgusting smelling mushroom. The name of a mon stinking it reminds red starfish covered in mucus which with its vile smell of rot feces and carrion lures various flies, so that they spread fungal spores contained in mucus. Being nearby from this mushroom, you might think that someone died nearby and is decomposing. But no, that's all. He has similar properties, possesses a trellis red mushroom, has grown to the desired size, and is now white. The membrane begins to split, and then the spongy lattice breaks out. The result is a very unusual looking mushroom, and it also gives off the smell of rotting flesh, trying to incite your own death. On this smell brings flies inside. The surface of the grate is covered with mucus, which gives such a stench to the cracks in the grill large enough for flies to freely fly in and fly away. They rub against mucus containing fungal spores, then they fly away, carrying fungal spores. Like you can continue this way by giving him multiply and take over new ones. The territory will be graded within 24 hours, nevertheless begins to collapse more often in total. Mushrooms use a simpler way to spread your disputes, using winds, literally billions of spores from each mushroom, which led to the fact that the whole land is ruled by one thing hidden from view. Kingdom, it covers them all, live almost everywhere. Even inside us, they are on our feet, in our